Hello, this is Lazarus Chernik, guest hosting for Echo Chernik on The Professional Artist, episode 44. You are listening to UPRN 107.7 out of New Orleans. The Professional Artist is simulcast on YouTube and Facebook and wherever fine gifts are sold. Echo really wanted to be here again today. She got back from her convention, and then deadlines hit out of the blue. New clients erupted and deadlines there, and she, up until the last minute, she thought she was going to do it, so she asked me to step in. I was just going to be a guest, but I had to change everything, so I'm the guest host again today. So please forgive me. I don't have the Discord up and running, but I am watching for chats, and I will do my best to answer what I see. But today I was going to talk about art careers throughout the publishing process. One of the things that many parents, including my own and Echo's, want to know when they have a creative child is what careers are actually available. And the simple answer is a lot. There are a lot. Publishing is a $7+ trillion industry, not just in books, which people think are declining, but they're actually not. There are just as many products, physical products being made today as there were 20, 30 years ago. There are just a lot of digital ones added on to that. So there's more jobs and more careers available. I've led multiple art studios, overseeing many, many artists. One of the reasons why I rose to that position is that I was able to gain enough experience as well as education in all the different possible art careers that were available. I started as a child learning how to create video games. I self-taught, and this was 1982, 1983, when there were not very many options. There was a Penguin Graphics Magician I started off with that was more advanced than an 11-year-old kid could really grasp. But I used it. And then there was Gary Kitchen's Game Maker that I did an animation for a science fair project that turned out great, got a super A+ on that. And the version of high-res graphics was still only about 1028 pixels across the screen. Low res was literally 40 pixels across an entire monitor. So everything that I was doing was 8-bit graphics, but that's all we had, and limited colors. And there were almost no drawing programs. I had to code everything by hand. A friend of mine, whose parents were math professors, he learned how to, I think he got it out of a book, but I could be wrong, wrote a graphics program where you would use the arrow keys or WASD to move the cursor around, and then you would press a number to show the color. And you couldn't save it, but you could create the graphics. From there, when I was 16, I got an internship at a zoo. And this was very, very brief. I'm not going to sell it. I was supposed to be there with several other students. I was the only one who showed up. But the zoo showed us how to use Quark Express and how to create signs for the animals in the zoo. And then taught us in the studio how to take the black and white printouts from Quark Express and use them with photosensitive aluminum plates to create the actual plates that would talk about the zoo animals. And that was incredible. I remember everything to this day. I fell in love with Quark Express immediately. I also got an an internship at an animation studio that turned into a paying job. Uh, this was an animation studio that had all these animations for sports stadiums. When someone was the Karen Johnson Productions, uh, and they were the ones that did the animation for the screaming home run. This is back in when the monitors were all the stadium screens were in black and white. So it was black and white animations. Well, when I was there, the stadiums were literally upgrading to color. So my job, well, as an intern, I was just sorting things and going through and helping filing because they were moving into an office. But my job, when I upgraded, was to take these black and white these animations, shoot them with a camera, one cell at a time, and save them onto this massive hubcap size 5 megabyte drive. You can Google an image on it. They're huge. And then use special custom software to color them in. So I was taking the black and white cells and I was coloring them. Now I had an art director, studio manager, overseeing me, making sure that they had approved of my choices. I had, of course, limited numbers of colors, but this was low-res animation still. It was still only like 400 pixels across. And it was working with professional animators, learning what they did. They were upgrading using other programs. That's why they would just need a kid to do this. They were learning Amiga, and they were using Photoshop at the time, and they were still sitting there at their studios, drawing everything by hand. And this is like 1987, 1988. Well, I committed myself from that experience to going to art school. I went to art school. I already had a huge amount of background in computer graphics. When I went to the computer graphics school, there wasn't a lot for them to teach me except to intimidate me by saying that my first job out of college was going to be sleeping under a desk for $15 an hour in California, and I might never get better than that. So instead, I moved over to advertising. Well, with my background in my manufacturing from my father, publishing from my mother, she was a librarian, my experience at the zoo, and the actual animation doing commercials and things, I really liked the idea of advertising. I liked the combination of being able to have access in my fingers at all these different projects simultaneously. And so I sat down and I really, really dug into the nitty gritty of all the different tools and techniques available to produce everything: graphic design, typography, package design, advertising design, videos, everything. And so by the time I was 26, I was heading up my own studio. It was for a manufacturer, and I was designing and producing labels and catalogs and brands and ad campaigns. It was a small studio. It was pretty much just me, but I was in charge. I wasn't just a graphic designer because I was also choosing the software. I was hiring all the vendors. I was managing everything. It was a true studio management position. And for the catalog, the manufacturer didn't have, they hadn't taken new photographs of their products in 20, 30 years. In some cases, 40, 50 years. And so in order to get the catalogs updated, I hired the photographer and I brought the products by hand over to the studio. This was in Manhattan. I had to walk about 10, 12 blocks. Some cases, I would have to take a taxi to bring them over because they were pretty big. And we would spend the day taking photographs, group shots, individual shots. And this was a really, really good professional product photographer. So I took the opportunity to learn everything I could from her about how to create the perfect product shots. Well, these were all extremely reflective objects, the most difficult things you could take photographs of. They were basically like pieces of jewelry, but they were huge. Some of them mirror polished. So we had to build tents, and we had to, put the camera up and look through the lens and find all the dark spaces and all the seams that didn't look right, and find ways, use white panels and fabric to cover them up, because they were too big for light boxes. Today, you can go to Amazon, you can buy a light box to sell small products. But again, these were huge, and some of them we would get a group shot of 30 products all at once that would take up basically the size of a garage. And we tried digital photography, which just came out. Well, digital photography at the time was terrible, and anytime there was an extreme shift between light and dark, that the pixels would break and they would show up as like bright green or bright magenta, little fractals everywhere. And it was not worth it. I mean, yes, you wouldn't have to deal with scanning in all the photographs to turn digital, but you would have to clean up every single photograph of all those little pixel things. So once the photos came in, I would scan them in, and then I would clean them up in Photoshop. I would have to knock them out, draw paths for them, make them so they look like perfect on any background whatsoever. For the catalog was white. Then I had to design the entire catalog, and I had to put them all in order in the place and make sure that all the text was there and all the prices were right. I had to apply the same brand over to the advertising, and make sure that, and deal with the management to make sure all the prices were right and the descriptions were right. Deal with marketing to make sure that it was advertising to the right people. I did one catalog for them that I was told won an award. It was in Europe. It was for a food show, but the owners of the company didn't find it was important. They were also a little bit drunk, so they left the award behind. And they just kind of offhandedly said, "Oh yeah, you won an award. I left it in the hotel." So I don't know if it actually happened or what. But what I'm proud about that is that this was 1996, and color printing wasn't new, but the digital version of color printing was new, and it was a little difficult to manage. Well, I have a bit of autism, as you might be able to tell, and I was quite obsessive. And I wanted, because it was a food-related product, it was cookware. I wanted every single spread to be a different color, but not just a different color related to food. So I would choose, tomatoes to decorate the red page, and breads to decorate the gold page, and lettuces to develop the green page, grapes for green. And so as people fled through, it just constantly reinforced that this was both luxurious, it was rich, it was sumptuous, it was food related. And I knew that from my father's working with my father, who was in manufacturing, that nobody likes decimals. Nobody likes decimals when you're dealing with a production of something. So if you just randomly throw colors somewhere, you can get color breakdowns of 72.37% of cyan and 23.6% of magenta, and that'll get you a lavenderish. Well, the computers don't like this. The printers don't like this, because the printers literally working with physical objects, translating that. Sometimes you're going to get the 72 might skew to the 72 decimal would skew to 75, while the 31 would skew to 30. There's a sway of the amount of percent. And the more awkward the numbers, the more variation. Then you have something called dot gain, which means extra splatter. Sometimes the prints, extra ink would show up where you didn't want it. And this was more common when you used random colors. So I deliberately made sure that every single color throughout had a 5% breakdown. If I wanted lavender, I would do 60 cyan and 35 magenta, something like that. Everything was within 5% increments throughout the entire catalog. And when I brought the files over to the printer, Hi, Robert Coletti. You probably will never see this, but I remember you, and you were an amazing, amazing account rep. And I learned so much from you that I brought it to the printer and to the pressman, who was an artist whose job was to translate all the art that came in and make sure it printed correctly. And I showed him the color breakdowns, the color proofs of the catalog, and he started to sweat. He really started to sweat because at that time, every single artist and graphic designer was just using Photoshop and choosing colors and just throwing them down, printing them out, and say, "Oh yeah, this will work." And he has to have that conversation about dot gain and all these other things. Well, he showed me. He goes, "Oh, this you have to be careful. I can't guarantee this is going to print right. We're going to have to go back and forth." I said, "No, this will print perfectly. Take a look at the file." He's like, "Well, here's all this." I said, "Just take a look at the file." He looked at the file. He looked, he looked at the at some of the back end pieces of Quark, which is in design, and I'll show you all the plates variations. And he gasped. He's like, "Everything here is in 5% increments." I'm like, "Yeah." He's like, "You did all that color work in 5% increments?" I'm like, "Yeah." He literally stood up and hugged me. Literally. So it's that level of detail that is, really can go into making a project successful or not. And I carried that level of detail to every career, every project that I worked on. And it was so far. So looks a little weird. A project that happens, which is why there are so many different artists throughout a project. Because it is hard for any one person to know everything. I know a lot. I know a decent amount of every art career that is in the world. I don't know everything, and I still defer to a specialist. And so you have specialists. You have pre-production specialists, you have post-production specialists, you have pre-print managers, you have pressmen. Um, and yes, I consider pressmen artists. Uh, you have videographers, you have photographers, you have photography art directors, because they sometimes projects need more than one, need both. Um, you can have graphic designers, all these different little elements that all work together to make sure the entire thing works. Um, and this is how I went from that one manufacturer to becoming an educator and then a creative director of the next job, building a department from scratch, because then the world turned to the internet. And I had the background in manufacturing, but I also had the background in low res graphics from the 80s, which younger people were still struggling with. They're like, "Oh, why would I ever want to learn 8-bit graphics, 16-bit graphics?" Well, the internet at the time couldn't handle any more than that. So suddenly you needed people who could do those little things. I ended up being I was headhunted to be a creative director assistant because of my experience, and because of my attention to detail. I would go from ad agency to ad agency, and I would walk through the studio seeing all my peers that I graduated with, sitting, as their juniors, learning those skills on working for the art directors. And I would walk right into the creative director's office, and he would say, "Okay, now this is what we're going to do." And he would teach me all the higher end stuff, all the concepting, all the project, all the pitch work, all the presentation skills, all these other elements. Now, pitching is also an art. It's a performance art, but it is an art. Education is a performance art. It is an art. But knowing what you're creating and making sure that creating could actually be produced is incredibly important, because you cannot promise something to a client that you can't produce. There are plenty and plenty of examples of businesses and companies saying, "Oh, we'll figure it out in post." We'll figure it out later. We'll make the promise now. Well, the legends are of the companies that make that promise and then deliver because they worked extra hard and they figured it out. The vast majority never figure it out. The vast majority fail, fall flat on their face, sometimes close their doors. Microsoft very famously failed in front of the Pentagon and got sued and had to be bailed out by a lot of relationships and extra promises and deals. They promised Windows, what was effectively turned out to be Windows 95, but they promised that to be delivered in 1992. You can't just make promises, not be able to deliver without having, someone to protect you. So this is all leading into what I want to talk about with the book Maia. Echo has spent years illustrating Maia, and I was with her every step of the way, helping her on everything. This included being with her at the photo shoots, overseeing, handling the lighting, double checking the poses and the compositions. In some cases, in multiple cases, and you might find this hard to believe, I would actually pose in the position of the woman to show the model what Echo was thinking. Because sometimes communication skills can be hard, and that our Echo and I are, we've been together for a very long time. We know each other's languages, and we can understand and we can communicate. I can also challenge her on things when she thinks she's being clear and she's not. And she can argue with me when, I'm not understanding things. Relationships that you can't have with models so much without a long time, without risking that relationship. You don't want the model to quit, be out of frustration. You just want to get the best out of them. So yes, I would put on high heels and I would flaunt my hands and I would gesture and I would lie down seductively and turn my head. It obviously just to show the model what was expected, because sometimes Echo would say, I need her chin just a little bit up, a little bit higher than this. I said, you need her to be more aloof. It's like, yes, yeah, I need her to be more aloof. Or she would say, it's the hands need to be da, 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 da. And I go, oh, you mean like in this piece when you did your hands, like when you had your fingers held like this? And she would go, yeah, like that. And I would sit down and I would show the model exactly what it was. I have some, actually, I wonder if I can do the share screen again. Let's see. There we go. No, Chrome. Let's see. Is that showing? I'm trying to make sure this is showing correctly. I don't know if it is. I'm looking at, I have to hit add to stage. That's what I have to do. And I'm hoping that's actually, wait, there we go. I'm sorry. I'm watching on YouTube on my phone just to make sure that everything I want to work out is working out. So I'm going to go to this section here. This is the book, the collection of images going into the book called the Illustrating Maia, which is all about the book. It's all about creating Maia. And there's a photo here that you'll get a kick out of if I can find it. Yada, yada, yada. Talk. No dead air. No dead air. Let's see. I have just glass. Model. Reference. I thought this was going to be easier. I really thought it was going to color web. Sort of. You know what? I'm just going to see if I can. I have an image of me side by side with the model where I'm posing, but apparently it is buried. It is hiding from me. So I'll just move on. So that's one of the things that I would do. I also would help her check to make sure that her vision, I don't want to say made sense, but communicated what she wants. She is an excellent illustrator. She doesn't need a lot of help, but every once in a while she would, it's a huge project and things would be complicated. So I might help her with one or two things. But more importantly and more commonly, what I helped her out with was she gave me this. This was a page. Is this showing up? There we go. This was her original page design for how she wanted each chapter to look. And she designed this in Photoshop and said, this is the way I want it to look. That's great. However, this is 1,100 pages. You cannot do 1,100 pages in Photoshop. And then there are a few things about this that weren't quite right. For instance, okay, the border all the way around the page. That's nice, but it was a little tricky. It also took up way too much room. It would have turned this 1,100 page book into a 1,400 page book. It just too much space. The font was a little too big. And she needed everything to be consistent. So what I did was I created for her, based on this, where is it? I know you're like, why aren't you prepared, Lazarus? Well, it was sort of a last second thing. It's interesting. I thought I saw it. Oh, here we go. I turned into this. So this is a template for Photoshop. She chose to do the gold arching background to replace the gold border that went around it. And this shows how much room she had for everything. The amount of space she had for text, the amount of room she had for the artwork, and everything that's red was just supposed to be blank white space that she wasn't supposed to have any artwork overlapping. You can't have art too close to the edge of the page. You can't have art too close to the text. And so obviously that would be hidden layer. She wouldn't actually do it. Then she would create her artwork around it. And then I would then translate it to the page in InDesign. Notice that I have borders here. I have guides. I have all sorts of things to make things as pixel perfect, consistent as possible throughout the entire thing. That's what I often do is give her templates or correct her designs to make sure they're pixel perfect for printing. However, the beauty of Echo's art is that she is organic. So it being pixel perfect can ruin the feel of something. There is a risk of being too rigid, regimental. Years ago, she did a project for a publishing company called White Wolf, and they did this with one of her works of art. She thought it would be on a page all by itself, and instead they wrapped text all the way around it. My favorite part is that all this huge negative space they gave. She had drawn a few bubbles there, and they decided to just have the text go around it to add negative space. This was a beautiful, beautiful decision on the part of the book designer and the art director over at that company. Again, two careers. When she would hand me artwork, let's just do that. So she would give me artwork that was like this. This was early on. Notice how everything is shifted over. There's too much margin on one side. The reality is we don't know where this page is going to fall in. Yes, it's page 1372 in what she represented, but that's just a fake number. We don't know whether it's left facing or right facing. So this is before the template had been completely polished and adhered to. Her Photoshop file is a little complex, but she has the header here as one single, it's called a smart layer. So if I open up that smart layer, you'll see on the right-hand side really how complex she got with this. There's still a lot of other artwork in here. Here's a photograph of that she took of me holding up the net that she used as reference for this piece. I completely forgotten about that. And she left it in this Photoshop file. Here is a clip of it that she had used, obviously. Let's see, there's what other hidden things are in here? Quite a bit. This is a previous photo that's a previous drawing that she then modified to fit in here. You can see we took a lot of photos in a lot of the different positions to try and get it to work. But you see, look at all the little eyeballs on the right-hand side. Each layer of the eyeball is what you're seeing here. There's all this stuff that's not there. So let's just get rid of all this for a second. And say, Not going to save this permanently. But this is what's left. It's still a ton of things, but also that gold is a single layer in the back. Well, translating that to something printable is a different story. Let's move on to a different file that let's try try this one. No, not that one. Oh, I know which one. We're gonna do counter questions. Where is this? Okay. Okay, High Life. This is an early version of High Life. See the sketches, you see the gold parts in it, the drawing. I was hoping this is the finished version. Maybe I'm in the wrong folder. Let's see, templates. All right. I'm just going to skip over to the, where is it? Here we go. All right, so here's the finished file that I created out of what she had done. Obviously, she finished the drawings, she did this, that, everything. But channels. Okay. But I had to convert everything so that it was only black, gray, and gold from what she handed me. And sometimes that was easy, and sometimes it wasn't. Because as the organic process happens, things can get a little messy, paint gold on multiple layers. Let's see if I have a version in here of the old stuff. So yeah, this was the artwork as she drew it. Each little element separate, compositing, compiling, that she drew each one over and over again to make sure they're absolutely perfect. That anyone who says that she was cheating by using this process has absolutely no idea what it took to make all of these layers and draw each element individually and fit them in perfectly. She did so much more work than just simply drawing it out and saying, it was done. In fact, no artist ever actually did that. Alphonse Mucha famously used templates and stencils. He would draw something as a stencil, a dozen times, choose his favorite one, and then literally lay that down and trace it and copy it over and over and over again. on his own pieces. He just happened to do it with a knife and a pencil. She's just doing it in Photoshop just to make sure everything was perfected. Um, so I was turning everything into these. Okay, so I was turning everything into these workable files. Notice that it's in a template. It fits exactly where it's supposed to in the borders. It is only black and gold ink. There is no other here. This is important. And printers really need this. Now, could Echo have done this herself? Yes, she could have. But the nature of organic art is that she really shouldn't be thinking about that because of all the other things she's thinking of. She needs another artist to go in and to clean this up. In art, that's why there are art studios. That's why there rarely is a single person working at a company unless they know how to do almost everything, which is rare. Then this got turned over to the printer. And the printer noticed that as they were producing this, that there was overlap between the gold and the black ink that was not good. You'll notice that here, I'm close up on this, and you'll see that there is some black here, for example, that's kind of rough. It's covered up by the black ink. Well, the problem turned out to be that some printing presses will print the gold ink down and then print the black ink on top of it, which is kind of what I'm used to. Those are usually called 2-color presses. 3-color presses, you can swap out the inks and plates however you want. It's common. This particular printer was using a very high-end, expensive plate where they never moved the cyan, magenta, yellow, and black plates. And then they would just add on the gold colors or the orange or whatever the Pantones were on top of that last. So that meant that the way this was going to work was that the gold was going to print on top of this. And that meant, let's see if I can get an example of this going. Don't flatten. Don't rasterize. I have to change this to multiple colors so that you can understand. Okay. It's not quite right as a color. Not really gold enough. That's more gold. Kind of end up looking like this, which is awful. That's not at all what it's supposed to look like. Actually, it's yeah, more like this. Or heck, even like this, just with there we go. That's what it would look like. So I then had to go into every single one of these images, and I had to, wherever it was black, remove it from the gold plate. That was well over 100 images that had to be done. And who caught this? Well, the pre-press person didn't catch it because the pre-press person was relatively untrained, and all they do is open a file up and look at data. They look at numbers, and they don't look at the art. It could have been looked at by by production in advance before it goes on to the press. And just glancing at it, honestly. They didn't have an artist do that. It was printed. It was noticed by the pressman. This is why I call pressman an artist. A visual artist is all in the eyes. It's in the attention to detail of what you see. A pressman who was not looking and paying attention would have just let this entire thing print. Instead, they found it, they interrupted it, they noticed this was wrong, this is not what they wanted, and they contacted us to fix it. And I did. But those are all roles of artists. Now, why did this particular company not have that many artists? I will only conjecture, even though I pretty much know the answer. It's just not appropriate to put it here. And the last thing I want to do is throw them, is to insult them. I mean, I understand that there were reasons that were beyond their control. But other companies will have this. Magazines will make sure that they have this. Why? Because it's not just a product. Every single advertiser in that magazine will be looking at it and will be critiquing it. And if a press makes a mistake because they weren't paying attention, and an advertiser gets upset, well, then they can lose that entire project to a different printing company. This is a product to be sold, but we're only making 1,000. But if this was a product that they were making 50 to 100,000 of that was going out to the rest of the world, this would have been an extremely expensive job, and they would have extra eyeballs on it. So we're talking about different art careers. You can have an artist do the actual drawing, the illustration. You can have an artist like me who's doing the post-production on it, making sure that it's ready to send to the printer. You can have an artist at the printer who's doing pre-press, who's going over and making sure that what I did and what Echo did would actually work. And you can see what happens when someone doesn't do that job. So these are all things that happen behind the scenes of art jobs that are not actually putting the art out there. Their name is not getting known. However, I have a second career on my side with my own art. So do pre-press operators often. So do all the different artists involved in every project, videographers, every level illustrators, graphic designers. Graphic designer might be beholden to a committee to design a logo. They might actually have a team of designers working on a logo where one person does a bunch of sketches and one of the sketches is approved, but somehow, one of the sketches is approved with changes. But then for some reason, that artist is not able to get that finish past a committee. Something about that the original vision gets lost in the translation, or what the committee imagined the finish was going to be is completely different. So they'll hand it to a different artist, You'll have an art director overseeing those, creative director doing those. All those things can happen. So you have multiple artists there. On a website or an application design, you can have one person do the UI UX, but you can actually have 5-6 different designers doing their own version of what UI UX is, and then someone decides on it. That's 5 different artists for one UI UI production. Years ago, Echo used to be hired by an ad agency for a major campaign, and what they would do is this is a weird process, but this is what they would do. They would literally hire between 5 to 10 illustrators to do 3 posters each. Completely finished posters. Hand them in, they would get paid. Then they would take the artist would get paid. Then they take the posters to their client, and the client would pick which of the posters that they wanted. And if your poster was picked, then you would get extra money. These are finished products. Echoes weren't picked, but she has, she has a client right now that does that. She works with them about once a year, once every year and a half, just doing complete finished work to be sent over to be approved. But she's competing against other artists. She gets completely paid for it, and she's worked for that client, but none of those pieces have been published. So it's awkward. But one of the reasons why, but there are lots of people in the process. I'm running low on time. I'm looking for uh, questions. Does anyone have? I don't see any. Let's see. I guess I'll get down to the what the free Maia thing is. Free Maia is the project that Echo's been working on, Maia, the Illustrated Edition, and it is stuck in the printers in China. They did a wonderful job of it. However, politics have increased tariffs dramatically. After running the Kickstarter and Patreons and pre-sales, we were prepared for about 4 to 6% extra we'd have to pay in taxes on bringing the book back in the United States. If you're paying attention to what's going on politically, that tariffs have been raised for products from China, which even though they're ours and we paid for them, they're considered a product from China, has been raised to 20%, and it might even go higher. There might even be penalties offered that the United States has imposed the tariffs, claiming that they're charging Chinese companies. But the reality is that the Chinese companies are passing on the pain to us, making sure that we pay. And sometimes that we have to pay our own government directly the tariffs, which is a penalty to us, supposedly that because we're not using a business in the United States. So I'm not going to talk about politics. I'm going to say that we could not have foreseen any of this when we were working on the project. We sent it to the printers in China before all of this happened. And we've been working back and forth trying to get it perfected, and they've been very kind and been very professional, regardless of catching the one piece a little bit late and not having somebody there. Again, I don't blame them for that, for not having somebody there. It's just how business works sometimes. And they're really working hard. But we don't have the 20% to bring them for the tariffs. So the book is stuck at the printers in China. We had another book that was going to be produced that we have to put off and take the money that was used for that to pay the tariffs. We still don't have enough. So to make that up, we've started a campaign, Free Maia, hashtag Free Maia. And on Echo's website is a page dedicated to specific, original, unique works of art, including original handmade works of art that we hope will help us get that, make up the difference sooner rather than later. If you go to her website, echochernik.com, and you go to the tab that says Maia, the Illustrated Edition, you'll find a link directly to that. There's also a link in the description of YouTube and and our website and Facebook that will bring you to that page. Or again, just go to echochernik.com and do that. Otherwise, it's going to take us a bit to get this out and fulfill the Kickstarter. Again, not anything we could have foreseen or controlled. So Thank you very much for staying with me. And I don't see any more questions. I'd love to try and what can I do for a few more minutes to? In, hmm. Oh, this is kind of weird. I just so happen to have been doing uh, a product shot of something of my daughter's artwork that she's produced, so we can sell them here at the art gallery. And this goes back to what I was starting at the beginning about learning how to shoot from that extremely professional photographer. Let's see if I can show it here. Doesn't look like much. It doesn't need to look like much. There's just some whiteboards that is in decent light, unless of course my hand shadows gets over it. it's a keychain. There we go. It's a keychain, and I'm going to be taking a photograph on the white background. Once I do that, I'll use Photoshop to make the white background cleaner. I'll make the entire artwork a little brighter. I will delete the hook, and that product will go on to the internet. In catalog companies, they can have in catalog companies, you can have many artists working on this. I was the creative director for a catalog company, and I had a team of 4 artists that were doing this constantly. We would get photographs directly from the manufacturers, and sometimes they were just not good enough or not good at all. And we would then have to go find a way of getting the product, sometimes literally going to the store and buying the product retail ourselves, and then set up cardboard, set up tent, depending on the size, and take the photographs ourselves, knock it out, change everything, and put it up. And this would be for about 200 to 300 products per month per catalog. You can see how that is a lot of work, and you need a lot of people for that. So catalog designers are huge. Advertisements that you can have an art studio with. When I was a creative director for an ad agency in Fort Lauderdale, we had a studio of about 30 designers and art directors, and their job was to take the ad that was designed and approved, and then reorient it to fit every single space. We would have a single ad that would look like a page. I can't just get the camera right, and it would be a certain dimensions. There we go. It'd be like this dimensions. This would be what was approved, but then we would have to put it on magazine ads that were like this, that were like this, that were like this, sometimes like this, and then we'd have to do internet ads based off of it. That would be animated, and sometimes really tall and skinny, and sometimes really long and wide, and sometimes square. And because these campaigns would change every week, there would be hundreds of these variations of one advertisement. So all these different jobs, when you look at any product, any advertisement, there's literally dozens and dozens of artists working on that. And I'm stating this to encourage you. There is work out there. There is a career out there. Yes, AI is out there, and there are people who want to use AI to replace all of those designers. But they're not there yet. It's not doing well. And that the reality is that nothing can replace human sensibility, because a non-artist using a tool to generate anything that could possibly be considered art is not creating something effective. They're creating something that is a appealing to the person. Well, if the person who's non-artist is using the tool to appeal to an audience they don't understand, then it's not going to work. You need an artist, specifically a trained artist, to understand what it is going to be used for and how to appeal to the consumer and the customer and the audience, and not just the person typing in something. So, on that note, thank you very much. This has been The Professional Artist, episode 44 on United Public Radio Network, 107.7 out of New Orleans, simulcast on YouTube and Facebook. My name is Lazarus Chernik, guest host for Echo Chernik, and you have a great day.